Rookie minicamp is officially done and over with right now. So we're looking forward to the mandatory minicamp when all the players are coming. And we're also looking forward to the time where teams are going to start, figuring out their rosters. It's going to take some time, right? I think the cut down this year, they used to do the cut down periodically, right? We're going to move from 90 people on the roster to 75 people on the roster. Then we're going to move from 75 to 70 or to 60 or whatever. Then we're going to move to 60 to the final 53-man roster. This year, it's just one big cut day. We're moving from 90 to 53 immediately. Now, obviously, teams are going to release players slowly and surely, but this time there's only one cut date. You don't have to have a certain amount cut by a certain day and stuff like that. But there is a couple people on the Vikings radar and on the Vikings roster currently that we should all take a look at and be like, oh, well, he probably is going to find himself getting released by the Minnesota Vikings. And there's one guy in particular that I think all of us kind of see the writing on the wall for, but it's not set in stone, right? This is just something that is speculated. But just looking at what happened and what's going on for his career currently, it just doesn't make much sense, especially with the depth that we have at that position. And Tyler Forness, who actually covers the Minnesota Vikings as well, dove through this situation and gave us one player in particular, a former first rounder that could be released by the Minnesota Vikings. And I got to say, it kind of makes some sense. So let's get right into it. Before we do, make sure to subscribe to the channel. So the Minnesota Vikings, okay, didn't have a good 2022 NFL draft. It was the first draft for general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, and he was using Rick Spielman's scouting staff to help make those decisions. Now, once he got his own process and people in the building, things seem to turn around for the Vikings. I definitely would say the same thing. Okay, looks like we're, heading in the right direction. However, the remnants of his first draft are still around. Okay, and the talk of moving on from some of their draft picks is getting louder and louder. The Pioneer Press, Charlie Walters, okay, mentioned in his latest column that the Vikings are, in quotes, likely to move on from first round pick safety Louis Cine and potentially cornerback Andrew Booth Jr. Now, definitely could see Cine. That's what we're going to be talking about today is Louis Cine getting released by the Minnesota Vikings. Hasn't happened yet, but it is one player to kind of keep your eye on. Andrew Booth Jr., you can, but I think we'll keep him around for yet another season because of the depth that we have at corner. And I think Andrew Booth, he started to play a little bit better towards the end of last season, even though the eye test told me the whole year, this guy ain't it. Okay, got to be better. But moving on with Louis Cine, here's what Charlie Walters wrote. He said, former Vikings first round safety, bust. Okay, I don't know why he wrote bust. I think that's a harsh word to use, especially when Louis Cine did suffer a gruesome leg injury early in his career, basically right away. I mean, I wouldn't say bust. Okay, things happen. That's just a very unfortunate situation. But he said because he's guaranteed $4 million over the next two seasons is untradeable. Okay, Louis Cine is not tradable at all, which it makes sense, right? Now, it's likely he'll get waived in training camp. If a team were to claim him, it would be responsible for the $4 million. So if the Minnesota Vikings decide, nope, we're releasing you, we're letting you go, and a team decides to pick Louis Cine up, that team then takes on that $4 million guaranteed for the next two seasons, okay? Now, after clearing waivers, some team might be willing to sign him as a free agent. So I'm not sure how that works 100% off the top of my head. If he clears waivers, I feel like that means the Vikings are on the hook for that $4 million. That means he can get picked up as a free agent and sign a new contract, which would add more money, obviously. But if he gets picked up on waivers, that $4 million that the Vikes owe, now that new team who picked him up would owe that $4 million. And he also said a second-round pick cornerback, Andrew Booth, who is guaranteed $900,000 next season, seems close to being done as a Viking. Seems close, but I think we're all looking at this as this is Louis Cine's time to probably, or this is going to be the end of Louis Cine and the Minnesota Vikings. And I got to say, I can definitely see this happening. Now, first off, already calling him a bust, like I mentioned earlier, might be a little bit premature, okay? Cine did have that brutal leg injury in 2022, and that could take upward of 2 years to come back from. I mean, it could even take more than that. You're talking about, if you've seen the picture, You don't have to look at it again. If you haven't seen the picture, I highly recommend you don't look at it. My mom actually sent it to me when it happened and said, "Wow, this is unbelievable." And it looked nasty. I'm talking clean break. It's very tough to come back on that, especially trying to play a football game when you're thinking, in the back of your mind, you're like, "Please don't have this happen again." Whatever, you get it. Okay. Now, second, taking that kind of cap hit without either trading him or an off the field issue being the reason doesn't seem likely. Booth, however, needs to be watching himself with the depth of the cornerback room, especially with his lack of guarantees remaining. So that would make sense for Andrew Booth Jr. Not a lot of guarantees there. 900,000 compared to $4 million. I mean, it's a little bit different, if you will. But Louis Cine, I could see the Minnesota Vikings parting ways with him because he hasn't seen the field at all since his injury. When we drafted him, I think 32nd overall in the first round in 2022, we had envisions of him taking over for Harrison Smith, or at least playing with him, across from him, I should say, for the first 2 seasons until Harrison Smith decided, to retire. That didn't happen, right? That leg injury kind of slowed down his career, if you will. And now we've had two other safeties flourish and actually prove that they're capable of being and playing in this league at a high level. That's Cam Bynum and Josh Metellus. When Harrison Smith retires, it very well looks like it's going to be Cam Bynum on one side and Josh Metellus on the other side. So where does that leave with, Louis Cine? Where does he play a part in this? Doesn't seem like there's much of anywhere that he could play a part in. The only time we've seen him on the field, at least last year, was special teams, kick return, punt return. That's where he was in the game at. Okay, he wasn't playing safety. He wasn't playing the nickel position. He wasn't out there, period. And that's because there's a lack of, or I wouldn't say a lack of, I mean, there's definitely a lack of production, but there's something about Louis Cine's game that isn't the same anymore since that brutal leg injury. And yes, it does take a long time to overcome that leg injury and stuff. But it just doesn't make sense for the Vikings to keep him on the roster if he's just going to be a special teams guy. Now, I'm not saying that they're not, or that they're going to cut him, because they could definitely find a spot for him on this roster, like in the special teams, or if he has to, a major injury happens at the safety position, Louis Cine has to step up, and then maybe he flourishes. I hope that is the case, right? But with the recent production and the way his career has been going, Louis Cine is definitely one of the guys that are currently on the Vikings roster that we could see being released during training camp. So you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're almost to 1,200 subs on Viking Syndicate, and we're almost to 500 subs, I believe, on Viking Syndicate 2.0. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. Have a great rest of your night, folks, and Skol Vikes.